Should be good.
All right, I call the meeting of the Annapolis Transportation Board to order. We have a quorum as I look at the images of us on the screen, but there are some additional members that I hope may join us if late. You all have the agenda. The first thing I'd like to ask is for approval of the agenda, and if you have any modifications you would like to make, now is the time to do it.
So moved.
Okay, without objection, we will charge forward. The second item, and I do have the roll call. Zoe is here. Let me just make a, okay. We have a super quorum here. Anyway, welcome to you all. And the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the last meeting, which were distributed to you. If you have any requests for changes, corrections, and so forth, this is the time to do it. If there are none,
So moved.
we all in favor of adopting the agenda?
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry, the minutes of the last meeting, and we are through. I just want to repeat, since we have a couple of people who were not here before, my earnest plea that since Tom Rikas has left us and is no longer serving as our secretary to take minutes, we urgently need somebody to do it. So if you'd like to put your name forward for this critical task, this is the time to do it. I can't do it all myself, and I'd really, really appreciate somebody stepping in to just keep fairly brief minutes of what we do. And it's fairly easily done because of the fact that we have a recording of our sessions each time, and digesting them into something which is brief, I think, is fairly easy to do. Are there any volunteers, apart from somebody who kindly raised that as a possibility before? Well, Alvia, if you're willing to take this on, at least for an interim basis, I would be most grateful.
Okay, well, I already started these.
Okay, thanks so much. We had the next item on the agenda is a period for comment by members of the public, and I've checked. We now have a facility for accepting comments by the public live as we meet in this virtual meeting. It's not implemented for this session, but from now on, we will have a spot in the agenda where people can comment, at least by voice. I don't think there will be a video connection, but there will be a voice connection, and we'll reserve 5 or 10 minutes in the agenda of the meeting for public comment if there should be some. But none today. So we go on to the treat of the evening. Elvia has consented to give us a brief rundown on what is happening in Annapolis, in the city, with respect to electric vehicles. She's been deeply involved in this and I think knows more about this than any of the rest of us. So the floor is yours, Elvia.
Okay, can I share my screen?
Please do.
Okay. Okay,
There
so
it
this
is
is a presentation that I prepared for a session that I did with the Electric Vehicle Association of Greater DC, which is the drivers group, back during National Drive Electric Week in September. So this is a very top level explanation of what EVs are. And if you already know this, forgive me, but I'm just kind of starting at the beginning. And I really do think that there is an electric vehicle in your future and everybody's future, because that's the way it's going. Just a little bit about me to kind of give you my bona fides here. I have been driving electric for about 5.5 years. I was, those of us who started driving that long ago are known as early adopters. And I will never go back. It's absolutely wonderful. Knowing that anywhere I go, I'm not putting emissions into the atmosphere is just great. I am the secretary of the Electric Vehicle Association of Greater DC, which you can join even if you don't have an EV, by the way. And that way you can learn ahead of when you actually make your purchase or set up your lease. I'm also on the ZVIC, which is the Zero Emission Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council, which is a state level board. And my appointment is a gubernatorial appointment. And we advise the Secretary of Transportation on electric vehicle issues. And the state of Maryland is moving ahead quite aggressively on this. The governor's wish is to have 300,000 plug-in vehicles on the road by 2025. We are only at about 10% of that. So we'll see how that goes. And I think that the reason that we're not further ahead of it is because there are a lot of EV myths out there. People have a misunderstanding about electric vehicles. So I am thrilled to be able to talk about this tonight. The reason that my nonprofit that I head up is involved in electric vehicles is strictly because of environmental issues. As you can see here, 80% of the carbon load in our atmosphere globally comes from transportation, including cars. And of course, there's airplanes and lots of other things. But if we're going to get serious about climate change, then we need to change the way that our transportations work around the world. So this is kind of what I'm going to cover. Types of electric vehicles, benefits, charging, energy efficiency, and the fact that it's normal now. This, as I said, this is very top level, but the way that electric vehicles work, it takes the electricity from the grid or from solar panels and stores it into rechargeable batteries that power the motor, and it's the motor or the motors that turn the wheels. There are three kinds of EVs. They're hybrids, which are not really EVs, they're electrified vehicles because they're not connected to the grid. And I only put them here so that you can see the difference because sometimes people use these terms interchangeably. Hybrid vehicles that do not have a plug do benefit from when you step on the brakes, you recharge the battery that's in them already. And it helps, but still they are carrying all of the infrastructure for a gasoline engine with the car. There are also plug-in hybrids that do the same thing, but they plug in as well to charge the batteries. And then there's the purely battery electric EV, which gets all of it, which does not carry all the stuff that goes with a what we call an ICE car. ICE stands for internal combustion engine. So I'll get to maintenance in a minute, but anyway, that's basically how they work. Regenerative braking is what I was talking about before. ICE cars are very inefficient. And I have another slide about that in a minute. But with regenerative braking, you can actually even come home from a short trip with more miles than you left with. And I've done it several times. It's really an interesting process. And of course, that extends the life of the brakes. And for environmental purposes. You have to go downhill
to do that, right?
Pardon me?
You have to be dropping down out of a mountain range to do that.
No, not at all. Not at all. A lot of how many miles you get out of an electric vehicle is a lot of it is a function of how you drive. But every time that any of us step on the brakes in our cars, regardless of what kind of car, there's the friction causes the brake pads to release a lot of pollutants, a lot of very small particles into the air. So if you use regenerative braking, there's a little paddle on the side of my steering wheel that allows me to stop or slow down the motor, which then slows down the car, and without using the conventional brakes. So some of the benefits of electric vehicles, operating costs are much lower. There is little maintenance other than tire rotation, checking the brakes, windshield wiper fluid. I mean, really, there are no belts to change. There's no transmission fluid, none of that stuff. And there's no, of course, toxic exhaust, greenhouse gases from a tailpipe because there is no tailpipe. And the instant torque is just amazing. So if you had an electric vehicle and an ICE vehicle side by side, and they were going to do a race, and they, you hit go, and they both hit the accelerator, the electric vehicle would take off like a rocket. Now, eventually, the gasoline car would catch up as it ramps up, and maybe even pass. But it's the instant torque that's absolutely wonderful. Some of the newer cars are getting from 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds. I don't care about that because, that doesn't, I don't care. But if you're on a highway and you're accelerating, or you get into a situation where you've got to get out of somebody's way, that's a really nice thing to have. And the other thing, of course, is that if we're using electricity, we're not using foreign oil. Some models are eligible for tax incentives. It's just about every model except for General Motors, like in the car I drive, the Bolt, and Tesla. They have already used up all of their federal incentives, but Maryland still has incentives. And they're super fun to drive. There are 3 different ways that you charge an electric vehicle. Number 1 is you just plug into your home outlet. My car is plugged into the outlet in my garage right now. It's real slow, but it does work. And particularly when so many of us are staying home now anyway, why not? Level 2 is what you generally see, for instance, at Maryland Hall, at some of the grocery stores now. And that's a little faster. And it's wonderful. Like if you're going someplace, let's say that you're going to go work out at the Pitt Moyer Rec Center, you can plug your electric vehicle in there while you're working out. And then level 3 is DC fast charging. There are only 2 of those in town right now. There's one at the new West Street Library. There's a fast charger there, along with 4 of the level 2. And then there's one in the town center in Parole. And that's it. Everything else is level 2. I just want to mention too that there are 3 different kinds of plugs. Tesla has its own thing, its own kind of plug. There are adapters that go either way. Like if I had an adapter, I could plug into a Tesla charger in my car, or in the reverse, a Tesla could plug into a slower level 2 charger, say. Then there is you see there where it says J1772, that's the plug that most that American cars use. And then there's something called a CHAdeMO, which is what the Japanese cars use. So unfortunately, there's not just one standard right now, but there are adapters available. So that's kind of an overview. One of the big things that people are scared to death about is that there won't be any place to charge if they're away from home, and that's just not true. So this is the most popular app for your phone that's called PlugShare, and it shows where all the chargers are, and you can see how many there are just in this area. And this doesn't even include Tesla. And the different colors indicate whether it's level 2 or level 3. And also, Electrify America is using the Volkswagen settlement money to electrify America. You can see that these are their stations. This is probably a little bit outdated at this point. There are some big holes here, as you can see, the Dakotas, Montana, and Wyoming, but that's made up by different companies, private networks. And then this is Tesla's network. Oops. Okay, energy efficiency. ICE cars are incredibly inefficient. They lose so much of the energy that's put into the car in terms of gasoline through heat, the very active combustion. They're just not all that efficient. EVs, however, are very efficient. So that's another benefit to driving an EV. I'm trying to get through this quickly because we've got a lot on the agenda. And I just want to emphasize that driving electric is normal now. Up until about 4 or 5 months ago, there was really only one company that was advertising on national television, and I'm using that kind of as a metric, and that was Audi. But now you see quite a few companies advertising their electric cars. Ford is really pushing their all-electric Mustang. Hyundai is pushing its green fleet, which does include plug-in hybrid, but nonetheless still electric. And Audi continues to advertise. And I did see a Volkswagen ad not too long ago. So it's becoming normal now. The cars are not weird. You know, you wouldn't know that it was an electric car unless there's something on it that tells you that. Choosing an EV, this is probably not the spot for this, but anyway, all those things that that I mentioned before, and you'd be surprised how few miles you're actually driving when if you're worried about range, especially now when a lot of people are staying home. If you're interested at all, this is a very handy guide that you can get from my website. It lists all of the cars, how much they cost, what the range is, a whole lot of information. And then on the back side of this PDF, it lists the hybrid cars as well. Although at this point, I would not advocate buying a hybrid, because why would you when you have range in the over 200 miles in the all electric. And finally, summing up, EVs are here to stay. There are manufacturers that have said they're not going to produce internal combustion engine cars after a certain date, including big names like Porsche. Governments are electrifying their fleets. Montgomery County and the city of Alexandria are now using electric buses. Those are out there. Electric pickup trucks are going to be they are in production. They're going to be available soon. And I personally think that when there's an all-electric F-150 out there, that's going to be the tipping point. That's when electric cars are really going to take off. There are also electric school buses. We've tried for the past few years to get a bill through the General Assembly requiring electric school buses. That hasn't happened yet. And of course, nothing happened last session when it ended early. But that's still out there, and that's coming. And finally, I encourage you, just on a personal level, to try it. You know, don't dismiss driving electric without giving it a try. If you anticipate some impediments that you can't charge, that kind of thing, let's talk about it, because there are answers to all of these things. Couple of other things I wanted to mention is I worked with the city, specifically with Jackie Gild, on the identifying places in the city where we could put public charging. And this is through BG&E. BG&E has a mandate from the Public Service Commission to put in public charging. And that's what the chargers are at the Pitt Moyer Center and also at the library. And that was the library, of course, was a deal worked with the county. But we identified a whole lot of 16 sites altogether. I have been advocating for having the city electrify its fleet for quite a long time, especially cars that are used for things like inspectors going here and there, knowing that the heavy duty vehicles are coming, the electric heavy duty vehicles are coming. But for now, we do have quite a few cars that the city could pick from to purchase, and it would be terrific. It would be a slightly higher upfront cost at the beginning, but more than made up for in terms of the lack of maintenance that's required, and also the fuel. And I think that's it. Oh, a couple of questions that people ask all the time. Well, isn't driving electric something for wealthy people? You know, what about poor people? What about people who live in apartments? Well, that's not the case. There are cars that are very affordable now. There are quite a few that are cheaper than the average gasoline powered car. And there are also incentives in the state for putting in infrastructure in apartments and condo complexes so that this is more accessible. And if somebody has solar power, either a private home or a complex, even better, because then you're driving on the sun. So if there's any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Great. Any questions? I have some. Are any rental car companies offering these as a part of their fleet yet?
I don't know. Probably in California, but not that I have found. And I always look when we were traveling before, I always looked to see if I could rent an EV. And as of a few months ago, no.
Okay. And sort of connected to that, one of the things that people are afraid of about EVs is that battery. It's a very expensive component. Is it possible not to own the battery, but just to lease it or have it changed out?
Well, that's an interesting paradigm. I'm not aware of that. No, I lease my car. That's what works for me, because that way I know that I'll have the latest technology the next time around. We don't have enough experience yet to know exactly how long those batteries are going to last. Tesla is doing things like when people trade in their Teslas, they are taking the batteries out and making them part of a Tesla Powerwall, because they do lose some of their efficiency as they get older.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to be a big issue with most folks.
I see. And the other thing, I noticed that some of the meters that are provided for electric vehicles around town are free. I assume that's temporary. How many of them are now charging for electricity?
So the charging stations that are put in by BG&E, there is a cost. It's not a lot. It's always less than gasoline. The
Is it
chargers,
basically the same rate you pay for electricity at your home? Like 15 cents a kilowatt hour?
oh, I don't know. I think it depends. It's by how long you're plugged in.
Yeah.
The two DC fast chargers in town, there is a cost for that, but I'll just give you an idea. I can get 100 miles in 30 minutes on my car for about between $11 and $13.
Right.
So it's always less. But like the ones at Maryland Hall are free because Maryland Hall absorbs that cost. The ones at the giant grocery store on Forest Drive are free. And that's because Volta, the company that's put those in, has advertising on them. So that's how they pay for them.
Whole Foods has them too, I noticed.
Yeah, the one at Whole Foods, well, there's two at Whole Foods. One hasn't worked forever.
Oh.
But those are free.
Okay. And I must assume that's temporary. This becomes more and more popular, they will go to a charge for electricity model.
Maybe. Depends. I don't know.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Thanks, Elvia. This is just wonderful.
Elvia, I have a question.
Yeah.
What would be a workaround for people who have just on-street parking, who don't have any off-street parking or a garage?
Yeah. We've talked with city officials about that. There are people who are just running an extension cord out to their cars. They didn't ask permission. They're just doing it. The problem is that the city can't guarantee a spot on the street. So you can live on, a certain block, and if you don't get parking in front of your house, too bad. The city can't reserve that spot for you.
Right.
So yeah, that's
so
an
I think
issue.
that's one reason the hybrids are. I know you said that wouldn't be a good option, but I think for people who can't always get electricity through their home, given the logistics, that still might be an option, right?
Well, yeah, but another way to do that is if we had charging in neighborhoods, public charging in neighborhoods, where you had to only walk, a couple of blocks to get to where your car is charging, then that would be a solution.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
But Elvia, have you heard in the Hillman RFP project that they'll be looking at charging stations at City Dock, et cetera? Will that be part of that effort? Because I know, I get that question asked a lot. Somebody moves on Cathedral Street and they ask where can they charge their car. So I tell them about the local garages, but I just think it has to be part of the whole network of what we're doing as far as, transportation in the Hillman garage effort.
Absolutely. It definitely should be part of that garage rebuild. So the thing is that people who drive electric go to where the chargers are. So if there's a decision to be made, let's say we were in normal times, and the decision was, do I go eat at this restaurant or that restaurant? Oh, that one has charging. I'm going there. And it's the same with small shopping malls, grocery stores, whatever it is. So if we want people to shop downtown, there's a big contingent of folks who are going to make the decision to go there based on whether there's parking and charging. And there is charging at the Annapolis Mall that downtown is always competing with. So,
Isn't there charging down at City Dock
mm-mm.
in Market Square? I thought there was.
Nope.
As we get through this transition to significant market penetration, I could see parking meters doing double duty as charging stations.
Well, yes, and that's the frustration. There's electricity all over the place on every light pole. There's no reason why you can't have, even if it's just 110, even if it's level 1, that's enough to top somebody off. There's just no reason to not tap into that.
Yeah.
Are there grants available, Elvia? For
There
that?
are grants. For instance, the grant that, the police car that the city of Hyattsville has, that's an all-electric Chevy Bolt police car. They got that with a state grant. So there are grants for various things. I mean, the city could certainly apply for a grant for for the cars, like for the inspectors and other folks who have to drive somewhere in the course of their job.
Thanks so much for this presentation. It's
Well,
a
thanks
great
for
introduction.
Thanks
And
a
I
lot
hope,
for talking
do
about
think
that.
about what we as a transportation board might do to add a little oomph to this effort for the future.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, next item on the agenda is legislation, and the only one that I have listed here at the moment is 03120. Ellie, you're here. First of all, welcome to, you're inching toward Ward 2. You're within inches of Ward 2 at your new living place, right?
Oh,
So-
actually, yeah, you're right. I can look over, well, actually, we have a lovely view of the cemetery, but
you can
yeah,
see
I
Ward
can
2
look
from your
over
house.
and
It
see
reminds me of Sarah
Redford.
Palin. All right, but could you give us something of the legislative history of 03120 just before we get into it?
Sure. Wait a minute. Let me tell you exactly. It was introduced, it was first on the agenda July 27th. And just for a little bit of background, we do legislation every other meeting now. That was a ordinance or was it a resolution? I think it was a resolution that we passed. So that we do legislative business at one council meeting, and then the next council meeting is when we hear from the public, or if there's citations and that kind of thing, because this was during a lot of pretty difficult legislation that we were there very late at night, and you lose attention, and the public is testifying, and it maybe not paying attention. So that this was the legislative action kind of gets staggered here. Anyway, so it was introduced July 27th, and
And Sally Nash essentially wrote this?
Yes. This was Sally Nash, and she asked Gavin and myself, and getting, my concern was City Dock, Campbell Park, and the scooters and all that. So there was a reason to kind of clarify this, even though I keep calling this sort of a double negative, but it sort of resolved a double negative in the code. It just kind of cleaned up the code, or that was the intention. So it went to public safety October 5th, but the action details are not available. They didn't, I don't know what.
Well, you had it on the consent calendar and withdrew it pending, thanks very much, some comments from us, and we will have
Yeah,
them,
we're waiting. Yeah,
I hope.
we wanted to wait for your comments. It was adopted on first reader, and so now it awaits your comments. There was a public hearing. No one showed up.
Yeah.
Virtually. But based on our discussion last month, you had some additions. I kind of drafted up what I could from that meeting, and then you helped me the other night just to tell Jacqueline, our legislative person, to be prepared for some revisions. And it will be on the calendar this Monday, the 27th.
Okay.
No, what is that? Next Monday.
Well,
Mhm.
thanks so much for that introduction. That gets us into the next um, agenda item, which is board action. And the first action, if we're going to take, is to finalize what we started at the last meeting regarding this legislation, and in fact, a larger subject of the riding of bicycles on sidewalks. There is a city piece of it, and I'll just go to that third piece right now. And that is that I proposed, and I think there is consensus, but it's open for consent for discussion, that that we endorse the legislation as proposed, adding only a few words of encouragement for getting stakeholder input and advice from such advisory commissions, boards and commissions as would be helpful in deciding which parts of the city must be closed off to bicycles on sidewalks. And we acknowledge, we certainly acknowledge that there are places where bicycles on sidewalks are wholly inappropriate. But the intention of this legislation is to at least make it not illegal anymore in the many places where it's quite safe. So that's where we are. I have distributed the modified version of the document that we discussed last time. It's it now incorporates all of the comments that I received from the three of us who worked on it, and from Tom Rikas before he left, and from the city attorney's office. Because there was a legal problem with actually naming individual organizations. It's now more generic and optional at the discretion of the Director of Public Affairs. So I guess my proposal is that if you've read that we have a discussion now on the city-only portion of the document that was distributed. Is there any input from members of the board?
So Kurt, when you're talking about that you added a section for stakeholder consultation, that's what you put in red, right?
That's correct.
Okay, all right,
Only the red words are our words.
okay.
Kurt, this is Zoe.
Yes.
I went back and looked at the comments that I had submitted on the previous draft using track changes and in the comment section. And some of them, the intent of some of the language that I put in the comments about the need for an assessment and clear standards and guidelines for designating streets as safe to be, designated sidewalks that would be safe, seems to have been lost. And I don't know if how that request or that need would be carried forward based on the proposed language that you have now.
That thought, Zoe, that thought is certainly incorporated up at the very top of the document in terms of administrative procedures. But you're right, it's not explicit in the ordinance. I'm
right.
not
I mean,
sure
the
that it needs to
ordinance
be.
just stays silent to that, but I don't feel comfortable supporting this proposed language unless I know that the city is going to undertake an assessment. I think I said, my comment was prior to enacting this change, a county or a citywide assessment of sidewalks should be conducted to determine current infrastructure capacity to accommodate safe bicycle use. And that regs and guidelines are to be established to determine sidewalk suitability for compatible use. I don't know how we can ensure that type of assessment be conducted based on it looks like a pretty simple ordinance changing from, to not allowed to allowed, and that they're going to make those decisions on what should be closed in consultation with certain groups. I'm trying to pull up multiple documents here while I go through this, but I don't know if there's a way to ensure that type of assessment and those standards be developed.
Zoe, can you suggest words to insert in to augment the words in red that we already have there that would convey that idea succinctly? I think
Well-
it's a good idea. I have no objection to including it.
I mean, it's sort of that some sort of assessment needs to be conducted prior to the city making this change.
Right. I
Um,
agree with that, Zoe, that there's a question of procedure or process in what we're doing right now. We're operating on two different levels. I see the reasoning behind clarification of the language as the as the situation exists right now. There is admittedly confusion at the three levels of government, but in the process of making that almost administrative change to the code, I feel that we are making a serious policy decision. And so your support of preliminary investigation of what that policy would involve cannot coexist with the automatic assumption of allowing by code bicycles on sidewalks.
So you're agreeing with Zoe, Carol?
I am indeed, yes.
Okay.
Because this legislation, if it were to pass, would just blanketly allow bicycles on all sidewalks in the city of Annapolis, unless designated as prohibited, where then the city would have to go out and erect signs that aren't there now. And I just have some concern that there hasn't been an assessment done about which sidewalks it's not safe, or which sidewalks have been deemed that it would be safe and that compatible use would be permissible or could be permissible and deemed in a safe manner. I just don't know about the process the city is willing to undertake in terms of conducting an assessment and sort of determining clear criteria that they would use to make that decision.
The other thing to me would be not just that, sidewalks were not well maintained for bicycles or whatever, but if you're in an area that has a tremendous amount of foot traffic, and you have you're in an area where, like downtown, down Main Street, if you just say, hey, you can ride your bicycle, you'd have them on Main Street and on the sidewalks, and you have
No, we assume that's
So
not going to happen. Those are the areas that are going to be closed off, provided that assessments and standards are developed.
And who and when will do the closing?
Well, I think that goes back to what Zoe's saying, that you need an assessment, not only of the structure, I'm just saying also of which parts are going to be closed off.
Exactly.
Am I right, Zoe?
Right. I mean, I had put a statement in at the beginning previously about the specific recommendations about developing those clear standards.
Yeah.
So maybe maybe in this ordinance, we need to call for the development of the guidelines and the standards for sidewalks, and then somehow, and I don't know, we could work with the city attorney to craft the language that would require an assessment to be completed.
Zoe, I have
Before this
a
goes into
first
effect?
stab at modified language that might accomplish it. I do confess to some aversion to getting very detailed.
Yeah, and so.
But let me just read a suggestion. C, except as provided in subsection. Let me just get down. Where posted as prohibited, the Director of Public Works, in consultation with relevant city boards and commissions and other entities as may be deemed useful, shall develop standards guiding the erection of signs useful in promoting safety and providing notice where non-motorized vehicles are prohibited. So the notion of standards, the development of standards, sort of incorporates by inference assessments that would precede any implementation of science.
Could you just add shall undertake assessments and develop standards?
Okay.
But I don't think the standards have to do with the placement of signs. The standards have to do with whether the sidewalk is suitable to be open for bicycle. I mean, the signs are how you're going to alert people that the sidewalk is closed.
Yes.
The standard is whether or not it's going to be open or closed.
Mhm.
So
Okay,
the
I
way
put that
you
in.
worded that, the way that
Shall
you worded
understand,
that, yeah.
shall undertake assessments and develop standards guiding.
I'd just like to call attention again to the practical progress of what this will involve. I see what we're trying to do in terms of making it clear that we don't want to endanger pedestrians, and we will set up a structure for guaranteeing that that doesn't happen by signs and by enforcement and by supervision, regulation, and patrolling, I guess. But just reasonably, that structure, that umbrella cannot coexist with what is already prescribed in a written code as an allowed activity. If we say in this legislation, as it becomes that you can now ride a bicycle on the sidewalk without the preliminary structuring of where and how you can ride it or not ride it, or get in trouble for riding it without riding it negligently, we have done nothing except confuse the situation further and endanger people walking on the sidewalk.
Well, I guess I don't see that as an imminent practical problem. I mean, the city will have a phase-in period, certainly.
But you're not in a position,
But I kind of trust them to do it in a sensible way.
to make the determination that it's not. That's a public decision. That's a community decision. This is the kind of thing that should certainly require public input, and it should be courted. It should be
and we ask for that explicitly. In consultation with relevant city boards and commissions, that's public input, and other entities as may be deemed useful, that's public input through such things as civic organizations, advocacy organizations, and so forth.
It comes after the change in the code. It comes after the change in the language of the code, which will then say allowed.
So I have a question for Alderman Tierney. Is this legislation being proposed? Or I'm asking, what is the impetus behind the proposed legislation?
It was for clarity, because the original language said, as you know, a person may not ride on or use any non-motorized vehicle, wheeled vehicle, in a negligent manner on any public street, blah, 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 blah. And then that just made that statement. So we revised it to say, yeah, you can ride on any public street, alley, sidewalk, or way, provided it's not done in a negligent manner. And then it goes on to say, in this reference to this section of possible negligent riding, et cetera, et cetera. Knowing the city attorney as I do, I don't think we're doing a lot of this code cleanup, if you will. And what his philosophy is, I think, I can't speak for him, but he doesn't want the code to get into the sausage making, if you will, because that we get stuck then constantly revising it in fluid situations. A case like this where we have more sidewalks, or we have this and that, and it's like, well, so we want to the objective is to codify the process. So I think Kurt is on the right path when he's attempting, I think, to address this review process. We're going to have a review process. We're not going to include the guidelines or the standards of that review process in the code. So then we can even say that. We can say, guidelines under separate cover or something like that. But I don't think, I mean, if you look at Kurt's, I don't think I have his latest, but you attempt to do that, if I'm not mistaken, Kurt.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it is a mistake to get overly prescriptive in legislation. The idea is to vest authority to do what ought to be done, in this case with the Director of Public Works. And I think it's nice to urge him to seek public input via a number of channels, and but I guess I trust the city to act sensibly. So anyway, I have included that word change. It presently reads, in consultation with relevant city boards and commissions and other entities as may be deemed useful, shall undertake assessments and develop standards guiding erection of signs useful in promoting safety and providing notice where non-motorized wheeled vehicles are prohibited. That sort of sets up, I think, a system that can work. And I've personally, I prefer not to get bogged down into details of phasing. That's kind of the city's problem.
Well, and the city attorney will vehemently agree with you that is what he's trying to do. You know, we want to codify the process, and we want to identify the accountable person to accountable departments, if you will, involved in the process.
Yeah.
And
So,
leave it at
Kurt,
that.
I think the beginning of your revisions were good. Where I still have the problem is that those determinations are being made for the purposes of erecting a sign. I think that's the way the end read. And it's really, for me, it's that you want the guidelines and or the assessment in the standard to determine where bicycles would be allowed or prohibited, not to determine where a sign should be erected.
Yeah, that sign is in there only because it's in the legislation right now.
Right. I mean, you don't need a standard or an assessment to determine where you shall erect signs.
Well, you
The
actually
signs
do.
are real well. Where you're going to erect the signs where you're determined that it's not safe for bicycles to be on sidewalks,
Yes.
and the sign is how you're going to notify people.
Right.
Well, remember, this legislation says it's allowed unless prohibited, and the mechanism for prohibiting it is a sign. So
No, that's the mechanism for communicating that it's prohibited in a certain area.
yeah,
I think she's right. There's one thing to say it's been voted that it's prohibited. It's another thing to actually inform the public that it's prohibited. And I think Zoe's correct.
well, the information will be by sign. I mean, nothing else will work, right?
Then I would have a problem with that, in that you would need to, I think the city would have to produce a map that shows sidewalks that are open and closed, and that would be their official designation, whether bicycles on sidewalks were allowed in certain areas. I would think there would need to be an official designation in a map form that someone could find. And then the city
Yes,
would then
indeed.
erect signs and certain sidewalks to communicate that, or on particularly where sidewalks are closed.
Yeah.
But those are kind of separate things in my
Okay.
opinion.
Well, let me throw it back to you. Can you suggest words that you think would keep the spirit and solve your problem?
Well, so I don't have the language. That's the problem. I can't see it.
Oh,
Yeah, can you put it in the chat, what you
sure.
wrote out?
Let's see if
So
I
it's
can
hard
do
to
that.
wordsmith something just on the fly.
Can I actually share my screen? Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can't see my screen. All right, I see this now. All right, this is the screen right here. Can you read the red here in the screen? This stuff?
Yes, I can.
All right, Zoe, can you read that?
Yep. I have to do these meetings on my phone, and so it's very tiny.
Oh
So
no, that sounds tough.
I think I think that's a simple solution here, Kurt. I think you're making a direct link. The process is excellent. This is what we're going to do, but then it ties it right into the erection of the sign. So it seems like we're going through this process just to decide where the signs are going to go. And the sign is just a tool. But do you know what I mean? We're almost there in that
Yeah.
sense.
I think we're almost there. Zoe, just to keep this thing going, I wonder if everyone would agree that Zoe and I confer on this thing, and we will sharpen the final 2 or 3 words that need to be in this sentence, and then share it with everybody before we finally send it on. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Oh, and if there's a little bit of a deadline to get it on, I think we want to get it within the 90-day thing here, and by Wednesday, close of business, by 5, if I can get it to Jacqueline, then it will be on the next agenda.
Okay.
Is our goal.
So Zoe, either tonight or tomorrow morning, could we talk about this after the meeting?
We can. It would have to be tonight.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm booked solid for the next 3 days. So
Another reason to sort of motor through this meeting. All right, let's go back to the full thing. If you look at the full document, not just the city portion, I've done my best to fold everything in, all of the comments, including those from the Office of Law. And I guess I would like to ask for your concurrence in putting this forward as an action by the board, a recommendation by the board, respecting actions that will be taken at the state level, at the county level, and at the city level. Has everybody had a chance to go through this? Well, you've had a chance. The question is, have you done it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was absolutely stopped dead in my tracks when I read where there's like a summary of the county ordinance, and it talks about golf carts on sidewalks. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So Kurt, I made some changes to the version we reviewed last meeting, and that didn't get picked up again on number 5. So my recommended changes on 5 were
On the recommendation number 5?
Specific recommendation number 5.
Okay.
So I had said the city and county should develop clear assessment requirements, safety standards, and administrative procedures regarding signage for sidewalk safety. And then it goes on, then it would be the same.
Okay, let me get this. Assessment requirements, what else?
Safety standards
Okay.
and administrative procedures. I mean, this is the language you could stick there at the end in the city code as well. And that's, for sidewalks, for procedures regarding signage for sidewalk safety, designating sidewalks closed to bicycle traffic.
Okay. Can you see my screen here? Shall
Yes.
develop clear assessment requirements, safety standards,
You need to take that out. Yeah.
and administrative procedures. That does it?
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else? All right. And then I'm going to offer, if you would find it useful, at the next meeting of the Transportation Committee, to give that PowerPoint presentation, if you would find it useful.
Wait a minute.
but-
Which PowerPoint?
Well, it was given at the last meeting of this board, and it was sent around earlier today. I'm not sure I sent it to you, but I will send. It's a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, no, I would, you're ahead of me here. Yeah, no, absolutely. That would be
You
great.
want to present that where, Kurt?
That would be at the City Council's Transportation Committee.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. if there are no other remarks, I guess what I would like to do is to have a vote by the commission on whether to finalize this and forward it after Zoe and I do the final wordsmithing to the city council. So can we bring this to a vote?
Want to do a roll call?
Why don't we just put up hands?
You've got to unshare your screen.
Zoe
then.
doesn't have a hand.
Well, unshare your screen
Oh, how do I do that?
at the top. It'll say stop share.
It does, indeed. Yes. All right. All right. 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4. Nays? Okay. 4, 5, 2, 1. All right. Let me just write this down.
It was
Zoe
five-
is a nay on this one.
So it's 5-2, I think.
I think my screen is frozen.
No, you're not.
Oh, I'm frozen on my end.
I'm
So-
sorry. That was a nay.
That was a nay on for Zoe.
Even if your language is added.
Yes.
All right. 3-2.
It was 3-2 then?
Yes.
I thought it was,
You
I
had
thought
said
it was, at least was 4.
4-2.
4. Okay.
4-2. Sorry. All
Okay.
right. And then Zoe, you and I can discuss the final wording right after this meeting. All
Okay.
right. Charles, you are here, I see.
He's muted.
Yes. Charles, have you been sworn in yet? We are not hearing you. No, we're still not hearing you somehow. At any rate, to proceed, that takes care of this agenda item. The next item on the agenda is around the table with status reports by the individual members. And Kara, I'm particularly interested in your following up, whether you are following up on the rental bicycle thing, which you had looked into.
The what?
Rental bicycles?
Oh,
The bike shares. So I wrote the contacts that you provided to me, and I haven't heard anything back. So I will have to follow up again with them.
well, you
Okay.
know, there are still bikes out there,
I
like
noticed
there's,
that.
and especially like we see them next to the Banneker Douglas Museum.
Yeah.
And we drove by the other day and Jim says, "Oh, I thought the bikes were gone,
Right.
But there's only one sitting there in the bike rack, but
Are
it's
they
sitting
functional
there.
or not?
It looks like it's functional,
No,
but
people
there's
are,
only one.
it's just their sabotage. People are taking them. It's kind of a sore subject. I don't know. I've asked Dr. Director Sally Nash why they can't come and pick them up, but I think they went bankrupt. I'm
They
not
did.
positive. They did.
Oh,
Yes.
I
okay.
believe the company that owned Pacer, Zagster is what they used to be called. I know that I folded, or at least weren't doing well financially.
Can't the city just pick them up and use them somehow?
I think inevitably that might be what will happen, that DPW will probably pick them up and put them somewhere. I think people take them and then they find out they're not really usable. There's something weird about them. You can see where, like at City Docks, they snipped the wire.
Well,
But,
maybe they could be
they're
rehabbed
bicycles.
and given to some, poor kids who don't have bikes.
Yeah, even if the shifting doesn't work very well or whatever. Yeah, I can follow up with Sally Nash on that. It's
Okay. Anything else, Kara?
No, but actually, would Sally Nash have any insight into what the plans are for the micro mobility share, or not really?
She would be the first person I would call because she would know who would be working on it. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
Do you know how to contact her?
This is the first time I've heard her name, so I
Oh,
would love to.
okay. Yeah, she implemented the bike share program in her spare time. But if you go on Annapolis.gov,
Okay, I'll find her.
It's snash@annapolis.gov.
yeah.
Okay. Great.
Okay, thanks. Carol, you attended the County Transportation Board
I
meeting.
did indeed, and I have some comments to that effect. And I want to proceed by saying that although I'm very glowing in my description of the possibilities for interaction with the commission, I'm very aware of the disparity between the commission and our transportation board in size when it comes to support and resources available for carrying out their missions. But my exposure to the commission's advantageous position was valuable anyway. It was gratifying to see the commission's strong commitment to multimodal mobility, complete streets, and regionalism. And there appears to be a strong connection between the commission, the county commission, and the offices of the Transportation Department of the county and the county executive's office. The closeness of the connection was immediately obvious in a conversation. This is just an example. At the meeting about how the commission should approach the issue of safe access to schools for the children of the county. Because of the presence at the meeting that evening of a representative of the county executive, the commission members could actually address the matter with her at that point. So this is kind of underlining the extent to which I was impressed by the interaction of the commission and the executive branch of the county. There's obvious potential for productive interaction of the commission with the city of Annapolis and thereby with us as stakeholders and members of that interaction and the city's diverse transit challenges, particularly because of the county's existing and active connection to parole. It was interesting to me because now I live in Parole. As you know, it's defined by the town center. Parole is one of the county's 3 urban areas. It defines Glen Burnie and Odenton and Parole as their urban centers. And Parole, in their interpretation, includes the section of Forest Drive that runs from the town center to Forest Drive as it exists now on its long stretch. The Forest Drive factor in this relationship has already involved the county in the city's efforts to understand the issues of handling traffic and development along Forest Drive with the Forest Drive Eastport Task Force, which is now discussing what I think is already a completed study. Now the county is working on the status of the heavily Hispanic population in the Parole area, as they define it. And there is, in fact, a parole mobility transportation study, which has been completed by the county. It's a document that we would probably benefit from by examining. There's frustratingly a Q&A meeting on Thursday of this week, and I have another engagement that evening online, so I can't follow through it, but I will. I want to find out more about this this transportation study that exists and includes sections of the city of Annapolis. The existing relationship between the city and the county regarding mobility, however, reinforces, and this is something I speak to very strongly to us as a board, for me, how deep-seated the city of Annapolis's commitment to going it alone has been historically. I'm a very strong supporter of cooperation between the county and the city, not only in terms of transportation and transit efficiencies, but in other areas as well that will have to be accepted in the future because of the necessity of cost saving. Nevertheless, the commission and the county have their own problems. The Complete Streets Plan, which sounds like it's been very well developed, I haven't read it, It's been sitting around on their tables for 6 years with no legislation. I was impressed by the apparent interest on the part of the commission members in working with the county draft plan for 2040 in the present, not in the future when it becomes up for more wider public review. Remember, we have a comp plan sitting in our midst now for the city that is something we could certainly address as a board. For example, the county commission is sending a letter and it was addressed in this meeting to the county planning and zoning office about complete streets. And at this point, it's not legislation, it's not an ordinance or even a resolution, but they are, as a commission, making themselves heard on the matter. And just to finish up, in addition, the county head of the transportation department, Ramon Robinson, in referencing the department's ongoing commitment to serving the needs of the economically disadvantaged, welcomed the involvement of the commission in the matter, to the extent of putting that as an agenda item at every meeting of the county commission. So I look forward to attending more of these meetings. This one was very stimulating and certainly put me in mind of ways in which we can go. Thanks.
Thank you.
My only comment on what you said is I certainly agree with you that us working together of county and city is really important for not just for scale for dollars, but just because we're so knit together that we really need to work together so that we're not walking all over each other. However, where are the county buses? I mean, you can say Annapolis is entrenched by going it alone, but I don't see any public transportation basically from the county. The city carries a lot, certain county transportation. The state carries some that goes through the county and comes to the city, but I don't see county transportation.
It's there, Beth. And in fact, I wrote it, many, many months ago when I was able to be employed and out in the world. The county definitely has a linkage with the city transit system. And for those of us who do ride the bus, and even though when I lived in Annapolis, I considered a trip from downtown Annapolis to a place like Kmart, part of my life in Annapolis, that would now be and is facilitated by a combination of Annapolis Transit and County Transit. So the first steps have already been taken. They're not extensive and they're on the fringe of the city, obviously, but a fringe that was certainly wide enough to include me when I could go places.
Okay, thanks, Carol. Zoe, you're next up.
I don't have any specific updates on the proposed bicycle pathway along King George Street at this time. The Navy is still working through those issues, or the real estate issues with SHA, but hoping to make some progress soon on that front on the real estate side.
Good, that's really
So
important.
did you say Prince George or King George?
King George, sorry.
Okay.
It's down King George
Yeah.
to the intersection of 450 out towards the Naval Academy Bridge and then towards Taylor Avenue. So once the Navy can establish the designated road right away that exists today with state highway, they will then overlay the 5 different proposed bike pathway alternatives. And so we can sort of begin working through the real estate issues with SHA.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And there's a number of other things that need to be accomplished as well. And once we can make those determinations on who would be actually sponsoring the project and who would be responsible for, or where we would pursue the funding for the project and then long-term maintenance.
This is a very important piece of overall connectivity. It's a shame we have to do them piece by little piece instead of doing really ambitious routes. I was on a telephone conversation with the county executive, and he was underwhelmed by our small ambitions for bicycle trail. He wanted something like 5 times as big as what John Coran was asking for, which is good feedback. I really like to get that. Charles is here. We couldn't hear him before. Are you live here, Charles? No, I guess not.
Let's try this again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. As Carol was saying, there is county transit. They're not very communicative to their drivers from the supervision standpoint. I know that. But they're doing what they can with what they have. As far as bike trails and use of those, well, we could always do more. But I don't really have too much input on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks so much. Elvia, do you have anything beyond your stellar presentation on electric vehicles?
Nope, not yet.
Okay. Beth?
Nothing going on for me other than what I had done before, and I think that's passed. The resolution that, yeah, in fact, I know it has. The resolution for the residents to display their parking stickers.
Great.
So.
And I have nothing apart from what you've already heard from me. I put a lot of effort into this sidewalk thing. It's a small issue, but I think it's an important one to sort of set a tone for things that are more ambitious for the future. The only capital investment we have right now is in the sidewalks, and we need to do so much more to make cycling safe for a larger number of people. I've been attending lots of meetings, but I won't bore you with the details. Ikwaku he sent me a copy of this last month's Transportation Department report,
Yeah,
which
we
I
got it.
shared with you. And I wonder if Kwaku is here now to present the Transportation Department. Kwaku, are you here? Well, he may have stepped away. I had a couple of questions for him. Is there any new business?
He's
The
back
only
there.
new, yes, go ahead.
It does look like Kwaku is trying to unmute, but I don't hear anything. So he is here.
All right. Well, and this is not hearing from him. Is there new business? I want to raise just one thing. As we near the end of the year, we're going to have to start thinking about the annual report. I just mentioned that to you. Nothing to be done at the moment, but there will be an annual report of the Transportation Board as we wrap up the year. And I have nothing else beyond that. If there is nothing else to do, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, and then Zoe and I can wrap it up.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
All right. Second, and aye.
Aye.